Thank you all for being with us. I hope you will stay for just a few more minutes as we pay tribute to a very special man who was an enormous friend to human rights. You know, of course, the human rights cause is fortunate that many members of Congress care deeply about the subject, but no one in Congress was a greater devotee or a more tireless advocate for human rights all over the world than the late Congressman Tom Lantos. Those of us who had the privilege of knowing Tom and his wife Annette, who we're delighted to have here, and who I might say is in her own right a human rights champion and aficionado. Of knowing them, to say nothing of their dogs, I might say, knew that Tom was a person for whom Langston Hughes's stirring words were not just rhetoric, they were a life's calling. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free, equality is in the air we breathe. Tom Lantos was also about the most dapper dresser I have ever seen in my life, was he not, Annette? I remember coming across him in Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta at the end of a long day of his flying around the country, giving speeches in one place after another. He looked as pristine and pulled together as any time I've ever seen him, and that was about 10 o'clock late at night. So to express our thanks to Tom Lantos, and you're seeing pictures of him here with various, and of Annette with various people, to pay tribute to Tom Lantos, not least of all for having founded and co-chaired for many, many years the Human Rights Caucus in the House. We are delighted to have several guests with us. First, Congresswoman Eliana Ross-Lehtinen from the 18th District of Florida, the first Hispanic woman elected to the Congress, I might say, and the ranking member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, which Congressman Lantos chaired, will offer her words of tribute. And then we're delighted that the Lantos' granddaughter, Chelsea Lantos Hedquist, is with us and will speak a word for the family. And finally, we'll conclude with a taped tribute from Elie Wiesel, who is very sorry he was not able to be here in person, but wanted to pay his respects as he did at the memorial service for Congressman Lantos. So first, the Congresswoman, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. I am greatly honored and humbled to be here today. I want to thank the Center for American Progress and the Georgetown University Law Center for the opportunity to join the Lantos family in honoring our dear friend Tom Lantos. Nearly 2 months ago, as you know, the United States Congress, and indeed the people of the world, lost a true champion of human rights and democracy. Congressman Tom Lantos, who served our nation and the people of his district with distinction for 28 years, died on February 11th in the presence of his beloved wife, Annette, his partner in life, as well as with 4 generations of their family to which he was so wholly devoted. An unfailingly gracious and courageous man, Tom was recognized by all as a leader who left an enviable record of service to his country and to the fight against oppression anywhere. For nearly 2 decades, I was privileged to serve alongside Tom in Capitol Hill. He was a colleague, he was a friend. He and I shared the experience of being what he called Americans by choice. And we were joined by a passionate commitment to the founding ideals of our adopted homeland. I was deeply saddened when our just 1-year-long collaboration as chairman and ranking member of our Foreign Affairs Committee was cut short so prematurely. But our sorrow at Tom's death has been tempered by our admiration for his extraordinary contributions to our great country. The way that we can continue to miss him really should inspire us also, at least by as much gratitude as grief. We do not only feel Tom's absence, but we also feel the presence of the legacy that he left for all of us. Just last week, for example, the House of Representatives passed major bipartisan legislation that he had introduced earlier this Congress, which has since been named the Tom Lantos Henry Hyde United States Global Leadership Act against HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And that bill reauthorizes and extends the unprecedented program that Chairman Lantos helped to create with another esteemed former chairman of our committee, the late Henry Hyde. And during the past 5 years, the joint efforts of these two legislative titans helped to save the lives of millions of people around the world living with HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And that legacy of hope and American compassion has outlived them both and will stand as a fitting tribute and a testament to their humanitarian ideals for decades to come. Tom's heroic journey to America, as known to many of you, would make perhaps a fitting topic for some biographer or a filmmaker capable of capturing the oppressive tenor of life under the terrible yoke of fascism more than half a century ago. Tom, as you know, was born in Budapest in 1928, and he came of age as Nazism descended upon the European continent. Imprisoned during the war, merely for being Jewish, he twice escaped labor camps and survived the Holocaust with the help of Nazi resistant movement leaders and the Swedish humanitarian Raoul Wallenberg. Wallenberg was later named an honorary American citizen pursuant to Tom's first major piece of successful legislation, and even today, visitors will find a bust of Wallenberg in the United States Capitol, as you had seen on the slides, a tangible result of Tom's long-standing gratitude. Tragically, Tom's family was not so fortunate, and they perished in the death camps alongside so many others, millions more. Tom observed and he endured human nature at its most depraved. His unsurpassed work as a champion of human rights cannot be separated from the fiery trials through which he passed as a young man. The horrors of fascism that he experienced were a crucible that forged and refined his unshakable commitment to the protection of human rights. Tom was a founding chairman of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, which will celebrate its 25th anniversary next year. With the tireless assistance of his wife, Annette, who is the co-chair of that caucus, he spent the remainder of his life at the helm of that caucus, which remains one of the largest and one of the most active caucuses on Capitol Hill. It is hard, in fact, to think of a major human rights issue of the past 3 decades in which Tom Lantos was not a leader, whether it was the fight against communism, against anti-Semitism, religious persecution, or human trafficking. On an issue as current as today's headlines, Tom was a visionary in his call for the protection of the human rights and cultural heritage of the people of Tibet. In 1987, he was the first congressman to invite the Dalai Lama to speak in Washington, D.C. He later authored the Tibetan Policy Act, which became law in 2002, and set forth that it would be the policy of the United States to support economic development, support cultural preservation, healthcare, education, and environmental sustainability for the Tibetans inside Tibet. One of the last major events of his long legislative career was the presentation of the Congressional Gold Medal to the Dalai Lama in the Capitol Rotunda in October of last year, pursuant to legislation that we had introduced last Congress. Tom was also passionate about the need to halt the genocide in Darfur, passionate to the point of civil disobedience. 2 years ago, he was handcuffed and arrested for his participation in a protest outside of the Sudanese embassy here in Washington, D.C. Tom authored the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act, which became law in 2003, imposing trade sanctions and travel restrictions on the bloody military junta in Burma. In light of the continuing repression suffered by Aung San Suu Kyi, the National League of Democracies, and the ethnic minorities in Burma, that act has been extended by subsequent legislation and continues to be enforced today, thanks to the leadership of Tom Lantos. Both at home, as well as in his extensive travels abroad, Tom did not shrink from speaking the truth about human rights, even to their most notorious violators, such as the regime in North Korea. As chairman, he also took the lead in raising awareness for the need to protect freedom of speech in the realm of new technologies, and he convened high-profile hearings that focused on China's use of the internet and related technologies to filter and squash dissent. And these are merely a few of the many examples that I could give about an incomparable career of human rights advocacy. Within Congress, Tom enjoyed the respect of his peers across the political spectrum because all of us admired him and admired his ardent patriotism. During our many meetings together, and especially with foreign leaders, his love of country was always evident. He understood a truth that all of us would do well to relearn: united we stand and divided we fall. To be sure, Tom could be a very strong critic of an administration policy during House debate, but he would not hesitate to remind a visiting group of European parliamentarians, for example, to temper their criticism of U.S. policy or risk being labeled as hypocrites for their feeble resistance to genocide in Auschwitz or at present in Sudan. His defense of national security policies would surprise and rankle some, but not to those of us who knew Tom as an unbelievable foe of communism, of tyranny, of dictatorships everywhere. I was proud to work with him arm in arm in his tireless defense of the democratic state of Israel, which, as he would point out, was less the product of his Jewish heritage than of his fierce commitment to democracy. There are so many stories that my colleagues in Congress could share about Tom, about his life with Annette, about his love of his family, but above all, Annette, his partner for 58 years, and his vital work on behalf of all of the American people. It is fitting that we honor the life of this great patriot, for it was his life and work that continues to enrich us. Rather than simply mourn the passing of Tom Lantos, let us thank God that he lived among us, that he made the world a better place because of his presence, and that he showed us how to live a life in tireless service to human dignity. Thank you, Annette, for sharing him with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us today, and thank you for honoring my grandfather in this way. My grandfather was the proudest, most patriotic American I have ever known. I was fortunate enough to travel all over the world with him, but no matter where we went, he always reminded me that we were privileged to be citizens of the greatest nation on earth, the nation that had saved Europe from Nazism, and the nation that had given him a chance to build an incredible life on a new continent. Because he loved this country so much, my grandfather was never content to let her be anything but her best. For decades, he fought tirelessly to make this nation a beacon of human rights, to implore and compel his colleagues on Capitol Hill to stand up against injustice and human indignity across the globe. My grandfather was a man who was never afraid. He was not afraid to travel to the most hostile lands, to take on the most powerful dictators, to fight for the most impossible causes, or to say the most controversial things. He knew it was his calling and his duty to be a voice for the voiceless. And I know it would bring him great satisfaction and comfort to see this group here committed to ensuring that our country continues to lead the way on human rights issues. As passionate as he was about human rights, I think my grandfather may have been even slightly more passionate about being our grandfather. And to the 17 of us grandkids, he was the best grandfather in the world. He used to tell us often, "You don't know how much I love you." And in this case, as in most instances, he was probably right. We probably couldn't quite grasp the depths and totality of his love for us. But if we couldn't know it, we could always feel it. We could feel it in the time he took to sit with each one of us, to know us as individuals, to talk with us about our dreams and our plans, to give us advice that was almost always spot on. We could feel it in the way he went above and beyond to help us achieve those dreams, taking us on college tours, attending our athletic competitions, picking out our courses each semester, discussing our career paths and job opportunities. We could feel it in the very way he hugged and kissed us, always holding on just a beat longer than we liked as small children. There is nothing that we can ever do, no way we can ever hope to repay our grandfather for the love and tireless devotion that he showed to each one of us. All we can hope to do, I believe the only way we can truly show our gratitude for his hand in our lives, is to grow to become good, compassionate, tireless advocates for the causes that he held so dear. If we succeed at this endeavor in even some small way, it will certainly be owing to his great example and to his great love. Thank you so much.
I'm not going to give another speech, but I do want to share with you a little memento that your generation would probably have a hard time believing, maybe even Ilyana. In many ways, Tom's eloquence and brilliant defense of human rights in Congress has elevated the issue to a much greater dignity and importance it possessed before we arrived. On our first CODEL, Congressional Delegation, visit to the Soviet Union in 1982, when Tom was still a freshman, the chairman of our delegation came to Tom, who was already known as an ardent advocate of human rights, and asked him not to muddle the serious issues of trade and nuclear disarmament which their delegation intended to discuss by bringing up flaky human rights issues. This is hard to believe, but this happened. I was there. He received a brilliant lecture from Tom about what it means to be an American, what his own priorities were, and what were the values that he intended to represent in Congress. By the time Tom left this world, human rights has become commensurate in significance and gravitas, which he brought to it from the very beginning. I believe nothing real can be threatened or die, and the love Tom and I shared for 70 years is alive and continues to sustain me. I believe that passing away from this world is not a tragedy, but merely a process of letting go of a physical body that doesn't work anymore. But his mind, feelings, beliefs, and even his personality, I believe, remains unchanged. From the human point of view, death seems like a defeat. But from the spiritual vantage point, dying is not a failure. It's merely a ticket we have to buy to get home. A gentle leave-taking that ends in a joyous homecoming. Tom's passing was a quiet choice, made almost joyfully, with a sense of great peace, because his life has been so fully used in such tremendous service to mankind and his family. He now left the world and went beyond to eternity.
And now we'll conclude with a brief message from Elie Wiesel.
Be with you today and take part in this ceremony. For I miss Tom. I miss his sense of urgency, his devotion to whatever has to do with human rights, his commitment to the defense of victims wherever they are. In other words, I miss his all-absorbing passion for humanity. I miss him as an ally, a companion, a friend, a rare and superb combination of logic and sensitivity, pragmatism and idealism. His role as the only Jewish Holocaust survivor in the halls of Congress will be remembered for years to come. Whatever the social or political agenda before him, he never forgot where he came from, a place accursed by history, a place where all power was abused by the fascist dictators and their accomplices. Often he recalled the infamous Nyilas fanatical thugs who, protected and encouraged by the SS, brutalized Jews in Budapest, threw them bound to one another into the icy waters of the Danube. What made and what still makes so many human beings so cruel, so inhuman? We wondered together. What made them so thirsty for hatred, so closely identified with death? What made the enemies of humanity so strong and their victims so vulnerable? But Tom also remembered those who, like Raoul Wallenberg and his other companions, so few in numbers, who in saving lives did bring honor and hope to the human race. What always impressed me in Tom was his deep sensitivity to anyone in need of comfort and assistance, of help, of solidarity, or simply a human presence. I have never heard him utter a remark tainted by cynicism. I have never seen him hesitate when human freedom and dignity were at stake. He knew when and how to act to impact other people's lives. So, throughout the years of our friendship, we were together forever, always participant in struggles. Struggles for Soviet Jews, for Jews in Arab countries, for prisoners of conscience everywhere in the world, for people here and anywhere who felt abandoned by God and persecuted by society and its various systems of oppression. He was with us in all our endeavors, always, and in more than one way. He still is, and yet he is with us, he is present to us, and I miss him.
go now from this place with the model of Tom Lantos in your hearts and with a renewed commitment such as he displayed to a world in which human rights are more resplendent and the common good more evident to all. Thank you for being with us today.